I'm Aaron Durden, Managing Director and Certified Financial Planner with LifeBridge Financial Group. We'd like to welcome you today to our first edition of a series we're calling Client Spotlight. In this series, we're actually going to focus on women entrepreneurs, and today we have one of our longtime clients and good friend of the firm, Chantelle George, with us, who has recently taken a leap of faith and started her own business. Chantelle, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Would you take just a second and tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up? What was your schooling?
For sure. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me, Aaron. Chantelle George, currently from Lafayette, Louisiana. I went to LSU as an undergraduate student and actually moved here to Houston in 2011 and spent 8.5 years, specifically in the education space. So I am a champion for students. I work in the area of college access and success. And so I've had the opportunity to work at institutions and K through 12 districts as well as a nonprofit. And during the pandemic, decided that I wanted to start my own business focusing on educational consulting. And so that just launched in January.
When you had the idea, I guess at the initial inception, what was it that was the impetus for, or essentially the launching point to take this opportunity and put your plan into work?
Yeah, great question. So I had always done a little bit of consulting since 2018, just a little side projects here and there. And I thought about running my own business, but really just didn't have an idea of like, how do I get started? Do I have time to do this? And so the pandemic actually for me was like the blessing and the curse. The blessing being that it gave me the opportunity to really be home and think about what is it that I want to do long term. I had started a doctoral program at LSU and knew that the current role that I was in full time, and I loved the organization, but it was going to be a little bit too much on me to be able to maintain that and also be in graduate school. And then a couple of reasons why I decided to just move out on faith to do this was one, I wanted to get to a place where I had scalable impact. And so obviously if you're working for an organization, you're working for just those individuals, and you can't really move out and about to really embrace and scale out on different organizations. So I knew that if I stepped out on faith and did this on my own, I would have the opportunity to not only work with 300 or 3,000 students, but how do I work with 30,000 students, 300,000 students? And I wanted to do that in a way where I was working with organizations who focused on the students that I had been working with for years. And so outside of that, I had worked with a lot of large consulting firms, and I felt that either one, I was just as smart, or if not smarter than them, or two, that none of them reflected the students that we served, and no one looked like me. And so I really just took the time, specifically during the pandemic, to figure out how do I create something that is authentically Chantelle? How do I bring other people, specifically people of color, into these spaces? And more importantly, how do I scale impact for students across the country? So I took about 6 months of figuring that out in 2020 and was ready to launch into CG Consulting in January.
What concerns, if any, did you have as you began to make the transition, or even when the idea looked like it was going to come into reality? What concerns do you have?
Yeah, I had a lot. I had a lot of concerns. Obviously, I'd worked in this space for over 10 years. I made really great money. And so, of course, financially, you felt secure. And it was in the middle of a pandemic. And most people were like, well, what are you doing? Thinking about starting a new business in the middle of the pandemic. But I was really called to do it. And so, of course, the challenges are always thinking about, do I have enough income? Will I have enough clients coming through? Can I really do this in the middle of a pandemic? As a Black woman, can I do this? And so those are some of the things that kind of went through my head as I was processing this. And I would say, the challenges are always like, who's on your staff? Who are the people that you want to surround yourself with? The business part of it, right? Not only the actual consulting work, but like the taxes and the contracts and the legal counsel and the finances. And so some of those were very new to me as a business owner. So I had to learn fairly quickly, and then making sure that I had folks like Aaron and other people in my tribe, as I say, to really help me figure out like how to operate as a business owner, not just really the consulting piece. So those were some of the challenges that I experienced the first couple of months. And then now it's still new, right? So I'm still learning, I'm still failing forward, I'm still trying to understand how to navigate the system, especially as post-pandemic. But nevertheless, it's been really a great opportunity, and things have been going well so far. So those challenges are continued. There will always be challenges as an entrepreneur, but I think it's important to continue to learn, grow, ask questions, and be able to circle and have people around you that are the experts. You don't have to be the expert of everything, but it's important to have folks in your circle that are the experts and that can tell you how to navigate.
Well, I will say personally, I think it is a testament to the level of courage that you have to, take this leap, take this chance, especially in such uncertain times. I think that it just shows the level of courage that it takes to do it in normal circumstances, much less in the midst of a pandemic, something that none of us have ever lived through, not knowing how long it's going to last, etc. That's a real testament to your courage.
Thanks.
You look back and it's only been a handful of months at this juncture.
6 months.
What has surprised you, or what's something positive that that's happened quickly that maybe you didn't anticipate?
Yeah. I think when I stepped out, I was confident in what I brought to the table. So again, I'd worked in this space for over 10 years. I had done some side projects here and there. So I was confident in my abilities, but it was more of like, in the scenario we're in, like, will this work? Will I be able to bring income and things like that? And so to my surprise, the first thing is like the power of a network, right? I built a really large network in the different spaces that I had worked in, and I still keep in touch with a lot of people, and so I was able to really connect with like 65 to 70 folks on my first like MailChimp email, just announcing that I have a business and that I'm open for larger projects, and people just flooded and they were like, hey, like, we're interested, we want to work with you, we know what you're capable of, we worked with you before, we know what you come with as far as like level of expertise. So that was really it blew my mind that I was like, okay, I have a network and they're willing to hire me or even email or send any introductions on my behalf. And the second piece is just the amount of work that's out there when it comes to education specifically. And obviously I think the pandemic has a lot to do with that, where you have colleges and nonprofits and districts that are trying to figure out what to do post-pandemic. So I've been getting a ton of work and opportunities to work with some really high-level organizations around strategic planning, partnership work, how to expand their model. And folks like myself, people are thinking about, how do you reinvent yourself during the pandemic, or how do you think about your mission differently? And so I've been in a lot of those conversations. So that's what really surprised me, is like, there's a ton of work out there, actually too much work sometimes, and that the power of your own network is so important, and it also opens doors for you.
Well, and I think with respect to the power of the network, what I've seen throughout my career and having watched other business owners, it's almost impossible to plan for, yet it seemingly happens almost every time, how much your friends and your family and your clients or customers, depending on your business, how much they become your champion.
Yeah.
And how they want to be a part of your growth, and how can they help. And it's amazing the number of people sometimes that are out there in your network that you didn't necessarily even know were going to be a champion of your cause and can open up doors that weren't open before.
Yeah, it's so important to have the network, to have people, and I always say this, like, the individuals that are speaking about Chantelle in rooms she isn't in is so valuable, right? And so many former board members and former bosses and people that I've worked with years ago are excited to see they want me to win. They want my whole team to win, and so they've been aggressively like, hey, let me send an introduction to this person, or let me introduce you to that person, or are you open to do this and that? So that's been really an amazing thing for me, where I've gotten so many opportunities where now it's like I don't have enough people for all of these opportunities, where I'm hoping to hire some individuals later this year. But really, again, just the power of partnership, the power of relationship building, the power of a network is so important. And as I would say, for anyone who's thinking about stepping out to do their own thing, start building your network early. Start doing what, as I would call, moonlighting. Take a year to do some side projects and kind of see, what's out there. What do people need? What is your value proposition? How you can help someone or help an organization. And so really getting clear on that is so important, so that you can be a value add and really be able to monetize your gift, because that's what you're doing. And so It is scary. There are moments where I take a knee and I'm like, what am I doing? But then there are also moments where I'm like, this is right where I need to be. And I'm blessed with the 10 years of having worked for some amazing places and being able to sit in this seat. And so now I find myself encouraging people all the time. I'm like, own your own brain, own your own business. I say that all the time, like, know what you're capable of. And because if you work for yourself, you own your own intellectual property, as opposed to if you work someone else, they own it, right? And so just something to think about. I think that a lot of us need to move to entrepreneurship and ownership, because someone said this to me recently, Aaron, of like, you know, when you have kids and you pass away, you can't will a job, but you can will a business,
Sure.
a real estate and all of that. So that really spoke to me, and I was like, okay, it's time for me to own something.
It can be a legacy.
Yeah.
It can absolutely be a legacy.
Exactly.
You can live well beyond your years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the path that you're on, I think that's going to be the case.
Yep.
You and I touched on this in a conversation earlier, where I shared with you that one of the things that I'm impressed with, and one of the things that I would have done differently looking back, is treating, in my case, a sole proprietorship, and in your case now with some, I guess, staff at this juncture. I would have treated it more as a business at the beginning.
Right.
I would have looked at the income as, you know, not necessarily my compensation. I would look at the income as the business income,
right.
and I would treat it accordingly, and would budget and things along those lines. So it's great to see that you're doing it early on, and that is one of the challenges that I do see in a typical sole proprietor situation,
Right.
when you don't typically have a lot of the overhead. You know, it doesn't necessarily seem sometimes to be as important, but you know, taking that approach with it, in my opinion, will probably present some opportunities for you to grow and invest that would not have been there if you were just merely looking at your income as your personal pay.
Yeah.
What if anything? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what if anything, looking back at this juncture, would you do differently, if anything?
Yeah, and you know, I of course started the business with Chantelle's going to go out there and consult and, you know, do the things, and then I realized that the projects were so large, right? So there was a ton of projects where I'm like, okay, I actually need a team to get through some of these projects. And I also was a firm believer, and as I mentioned before, wanting to have more consultants of color, because that was something I just didn't see in my 10 years of education experience. And I'm like, you know, I know so many amazing data folks and strategic planners and operations and curriculum who are awesome. And so how do I tap those individuals to come in, be on a project with me, and we can move efficiently and get work done quicker with more folks. And so it was about a month when I realized, okay, I have to hire some contractors because this is a lot of work. So I think that was, as you mentioned, a good move that I made early on, and now just already looking forward to like how many more individuals can I bring on to projects. But as far as like if there's anything I would have done differently, I probably actually would have stepped out earlier. I like, honestly, I was like, man, I should have actually done this, you know, pre-pandemic or 2 years ago. But a lot of it was just trying to process, like, can I really do this? Like, is it possible for me to do this? And I think timing is also like the perfect thing, where I had that opportunity, those 6 months of being quarantined at home, to really process, this is what I want to do. This is where I see myself long term. Because prior to that, I was on and off planes, traveling a lot for work, and putting my all into these jobs. And I was like, how do I put my all into myself? How do I wake up and sell Chantelle every day? And that's exactly like what I'm doing, selling my company, selling what we're able to do. And so that's really been, you know, transformative.
You talked a moment ago about owning the intellectual property and the various aspects of being a business owner. And one of the things that I've heard recently, either in something that I read or saw, was an entrepreneur saying that they own their time. And I know that you'll attest to this, that it's a lot of work, and it can be a lot of hours, especially early on. But as you get the infrastructure in place, you then do own your time. And I like your encouragement of the entrepreneurial spirit, because I think that, you know, with longevity, medicine the way that it is, we're living longer, and I'm seeing folks retire and they're extremely healthy and have decades of life ahead. And I think there's a real opportunity for individuals to use their skills and everything that they've learned, their wisdom over a 30 to 40 year career, and could transition into retirement where they own their time, but they're actually still doing something that brings them value and allows them to give value to others. So I think that that's a really astute way to look at it, that you own essentially everything in the process.
Own your own brain.
Own your own brain.
Own your own brain.
And that's the first time I've heard that. I'm going to use it.
It's trademarked by me. So but it's something I say. I've said it for a while when people ask, what made you, step out to do this? And the first thing I said, I wanted to own my own brain. I knew that I built programs and partnerships that are continuing to outlive me. And I know models that work. And I wanted to get to a space where, how do I bring this to several organizations where I'm not in a conflict of interest? I can actually help everyone. And the way to do that was really to be on my own. And that I actually own the things that I'm bringing to organizations, and compensated for that, compensated for my time, my expertise, and that is so important because there's a ton of individuals, I know, who are working for places, and again, I'm not saying quit your job, that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that think about what you do and how your organization benefits from what you do. So for example, if you're writing curriculum, if you are leading a massive grant, all of the work you're doing is amazing, and think about how you can actually do that and replicate that in other places for many different folks, and be able to do it on your own and be able to call the shots. And so that's really been eye-opening and important for me.
Where you are today, if you had to identify one thing, what would you say that your biggest success so far has been? The work itself is so important to me. Obviously, I wake up in the morning energized about how I can continue to help young people get across the finish line, How do I ensure that they know and they have opportunities, whether it is college, community college, technical workforce, that they know that those opportunities exist. And now in a post-pandemic world where a lot of our students are behind, they're behind academically, socially, mentally. So this is a year to really try to figure out how do we ensure that everybody is caught up and that those opportunities still exist. So that's what keeps me up in the morning. That's what keeps me going. That's what keeps my team going. And outside of that, I would say that I think it's important for people to see a Black woman owner and a leader, especially at this time where we have so much going on in the world. And so for me, I find myself in a lot of conversations, talking to people, and they're like, hey, how did you do it? I'm like, you can do it too. If I can do it, you can do it. And so that's really been exciting. And again, like I said, to be able to hire people that look like me, people of color that represent the students that we serve, which is something, unfortunately, that we haven't seen as often. And now I'm pushing some of my other consulting firms out there to really think about, who you're hiring, and, as you think about strategic planning for communities that you actually have been in is so important, because we do bring that perspective to that. So I would say those have been the things that are exciting. As we begin to wrap up, I'll ask a multi-part question. Earlier you gave some advice, and I think if I understood you correctly, and I think that this is really good advice, you were giving some examples of how to sort of test the waters, or maybe do some market research, so to speak, and maybe not jump in with both feet right off the bat, that you could possibly begin to formulate the business or the product or whatever it is that you're wanting to do, and not necessarily, like you said a second ago, quit your job immediately. You could gradually grow the business. And on that note, with respect to advice, what advice other than that might you give somebody that was looking to make a change, looking to start a business? And then secondarily, as we wrap up, what does the future look like for Chantelle George Consulting?
Yeah, great question. I would say advice for anyone that's thinking about stepping out to do their own thing is figuring out the why, why do you want to step out and do this? What is the thing that you want to do? I did a lot of this work before I had a website, before I had any clients. I did a lot of soul searching, I talked to 25 people that knew me well, Hey, what are my 3 superpowers? You've worked with me before. What are the things that I bring to the table? Which were great conversations. But also, what are the things that I shouldn't bring to the table? And so those were really, really honest conversations as well. But I think really figuring out, I was in church one day and the pastor said this: if you could think about something that you would do every day for free, like if you didn't have to worry about bills, what is that? And whatever the first thing that pops into your head is probably your project, the thing that you need to work on.
Sure.
So I would recommend, again, finding out the why, figuring out your value proposition, which is like, how do you add value to the world? What does that look like? And then figuring out like the nuts and bolts of like, creating an LLC, creating an EIN, and all that stuff is very simple. There's so many YouTube videos and there's so many coaches out there that can help you. But I think if you know your why, that is so key before you even get into the technical pieces. So that would be my advice. The second piece around CG Consulting is I'm hoping to expand. I'm hoping to expand to a full team. We have a lot of work coming in across the country. I'm based in New Orleans, but we have work everywhere. I have teammates that live everywhere. And so I really want to get to a place where I have a solid 10 to 15 folks who are on fire about students, who are on fire about helping these organizations, districts, and colleges within the next year. And so that's one of my biggest goals, is to increase impact and making sure that we are being strategic about post-pandemic funding and that we're continuing to make a mark in young people's lives across the country.
Well, the work that you're doing is certainly timely, very appropriate. I think you could not have given better advice to tell somebody who's thinking about a business that they need to identify and define the why. One of the unique things about being a business owner is, all of the things we said about owning time and things along those lines. But the why, you have the ability to get up every day and do something that provides you value, but you're doing so in such a way that you're giving away your passion, and in return, you're getting all these benefits, right?
Yeah.
And that's drastically different than just being hired by a company to do a given job. And that might be fruitful for yourself, and it might be fruitful, obviously, for those that you're working with or for. But certainly, you have the full control as a business owner to say, I'm getting up every day and I'm doing this because, in my case, I don't want people to lose sleep over money. Right. In your case, we want to make sure that there are opportunities and pathways for the best of the best under any situation, that they can be seen, heard, and we can leverage their knowledge. I appreciate you all joining us today. Chantelle, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
What I didn't share with you all, she actually made a special trip in from Louisiana. And so thank you very much. We'll be back with more episodes as we focus on women entrepreneurs. If there's anything that we can do to help you financially or otherwise, please reach out to us. Thanks again for your support. Thanks for being clients, and have a wonderful day.